With Vectorworks 2022, our suite of entertainment tools focus on improving your workflow and saving you time by tapping into next-gen technology and making the user interface more responsive. The new Texture tool lets you map different textures to each face of your 3D objects, giving you the flexibility to create a more precise model. Scenic and set designers can visualize these textures faster with the new Redshift render mode in Spotlight, as well as take advantage of the new Twin-Motion Direct Link for easier syncing between platforms. Improvements across Spotlight bring you better camera controls, position name fields for trusses, and context menus for moving data around. And save time in day-to-day documentation with improved object placement and direct editing and schematic views. Wire objects quickly and accurately with the updated cable and power planning suite, with new tools like power usage tracking and auto cable length adjustment, so you can plan with confidence. Map out ConnectCAD cable routes in 3D model space for accurate reports on how much cable you'll need for installation. Also, ConnectCAD devices can now be edited directly within the interface, and the new eyedropper mode allows modifications to be easily copied from one device to another. Working with truss objects in any environment is now easier with enhancements to the Auto Connect mode, giving you the right orientation the first time and every time. With Vision 2022, the rendering environment now has better default settings and a simplified layout, letting you start programming with less time tweaking controls. You can also program lasers with a direct connection to the industry-leading Pangolin Beyond software. Work smarter, work faster, and design without limits with Vectorworks 2022.
Hello and welcome to today's Vectorworks Spotlight Essential Seminar. My name is Michael Groves and I'm the Global Training Manager here at Vectorworks. And in today's seminar, we're going to explore some of the most common workflows and utilize the latest tools and commands of Vectorworks Spotlight. Now, before we begin, I'd like to cover a few housekeeping items. First, if you have any questions at all during the seminar, in the GoToWebinar interface, you're going to see a questions button. Please go ahead and use that button to submit any questions, and we will have a member of our customer success team reach out to you to assist. Also, you'll notice a handouts button there as well. You will find a link to the course files for today's seminar. If you have not had a chance already, please go ahead and download these files now. Next, I'd like to introduce the presenter of today's seminar, Ben Elmore, Spotlight Trainer here at Vectorworks. Ben Elmore has over 20 years of experience in the live event industry. Before joining the Vectorworks training team, Ben worked as a project manager for most of his career, along with being an ETCP certified rigger. In these roles, Ben incorporated Vectorworks Spotlight into his workflow to design, visualize, and produce live events in every corner of the United States. Ben has a highly technical background and a plethora of experience using Vectorworks Spotlight, Braceworks, Vision, and ConnectCAD. He enjoys sharing his knowledge of Vectorworks and helping users gain speed and efficiency while drafting. Now, one last thing I'd like to mention before we begin. We will be covering a lot of information during today's seminar. If you would like, you can try to follow along. However, I strongly recommend to just sit back, watch, and take notes. You will be receiving a link to rewatch this seminar later today, so you will have an opportunity to rewatch the seminar where you can pause, rewind, and follow along more easily. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. I hope everyone enjoys today's seminar. Let me go ahead and hand it over to Ben.
All right, thanks Mike, and welcome everybody to the Spotlight Essentials Seminar 2022. The goal of this course is to demonstrate a Vectorworks Spotlight workflow starting from a blank document and taking it all the way to an export. We're going to try and do this in under 2 hours, and along the way, highlight tools and commands that are unique to the Spotlight module. The prerequisite for this course is the Getting Started seminar, which covered the workspace and some fundamental concepts of Vectorworks. If you've not watched that, we highly encourage it, because today we're going to breeze through a whole bunch of things in a short amount of time. As far as the outline, we're going to import a simple drawing. We'll create the venue shell. We'll add a stage and seating. We'll add sound, lights, video. We'll create a viewport and put it on a sheet layer, and finally export that PDF. Regarding my setup, I'm using Vectorworks 2022 Service Pack 1, and while this is being recorded on a Mac, the user experience on Windows is nearly identical, so I'll try and call out any different keyboard shortcuts along the way. All right, now before we get started, we just need to configure a few settings to make sure that we're all seeing the same thing. First and foremost, we need to make sure that we're in the Spotlight workspace. So if you haven't done so already, go to the Tools drop-down, Workspaces, and make sure Spotlight is selected. As you might remember from the Getting Started seminar, Workspace controls everything that you see, from the menus to the keyboard shortcuts to the tool sets down here. In our case today, this adds our lighting tool set, our rigging tool set, and our event design tool set. Next, we're going to reset our smart cursor and our snaps back to their defaults. So in Vectorworks 2022, our snapping palette has moved to the bottom toolbar, and in the very bottom right corner is a little wheel. Click on that, reset all snaps to default. And then finally, since all of our exporting today is going to be done from a sheet layer, and we're currently looking at a design layer, to alleviate any confusion, I'm going to go to the File, Page Setup, and I'm turning off my page boundary for the design layer. Alright, so first thing we're going to do is import the drawing. And there are many file types and formats that can be brought into Vectorworks. If we go to File, Import, you'll see the Spotlight workspace has added things like Point Cloud, SketchUp, and a whole bunch of other file types that can be brought right in. In the case of venue drawings, we're normally getting DWG or PDF. Now granted, DWG generally has more data if you can get your hand on it, but I'm going to demonstrate today that a PDF can be just as accurate, assuming that it's been exported and then imported correctly. So we could either import from this menu, or I'd like to point out that anything that can be imported into the drawing can be dragged and dropped into the workspace. This goes for image files, DWGs, or in this case, a PDF. Once you get this dialog, you can select which page you want to import, whether or not you want to reference it, and then most importantly, snap to geometry. So I draw your attention to this because this is what affords us the accuracy and the precision of the DWG. So with that being selected, I'm going to hit Import, and here we have a PDF in our drawing. We can see in the Object Info palette, it says PDF page, and the first thing we want to do after importing anything is to check the scale. So a convenient tool is in the Basic tool set and the Tape Measure tool. I need to find some known dimension on the drawing and compare it with that. So in the case of this stage, if I click this corner and this endpoint, you'll see I'm getting a measurement of 10 feet. And that is not correct, so this needs scaled. Now I'll point out, we're not scaling the layer. If you click around, you might see a layer scale, and that's not what we want to do. We just need to change the size of this PDF. The best way to do that, make sure it's selected, and then we're going to go to Modify, Scale Objects. By default, Symmetric probably comes up, but you want this second option, Symmetric by Distance. And what this does is lets us grab a dimension from the drawing and tell it what it's supposed to be. So in the case of this stage, if I grab this corner and this corner, it's filled in 10 feet and that change. And I tell it I want that to be 40 feet. It's 40, tick mark. I'm going to accept all the other defaults and hit OK. You'll see it got larger. And then we can go back to that tape measure tool and compare it now. Endpoint. And you'll see I'm getting 40 feet on that. And you'll see I'm getting 24 feet on that. Now there's also a scale bar down here in the bottom if I wanted to be extra sure, and 10 feet. So fantastic. I feel like this PDF is scaled correctly. I'm going to do a few more things before we move on. I want to center this in our drawing space. So with that selected, I'm going to make sure my center control point's on, and I'm just going to send this to 0, 0 in my drawing. And next, we're just going to rename this design layer. You'll see if I select the PDF, it's on the default design layer number 1. So we're going to do our first bit of organization here. Go to the navigation palette, make sure we're on the Layers tab, select that design layer 1, and we can either right-click, edit, go to the top of this dialog and change the name up here, or I'm just going to rename this PDF and hit OK. Or an alternate method is to go right to the navigation palette, find that row, click the little pencil icon, and directly edit the values here. Once this is done, we have our PDF on a PDF layer and we're ready to take the next step. So our next step in this process is going to be to go ahead and create some room geometry. And the first step is going to be to create a design layer to hold that geometry. So over in the navigation palette, let's make sure we're on the design layer tab, and we can either control click in a blank area or right click and hit new. The new design layer dialog should pop up. We're going to name this venue and just accept the defaults and hit OK. Now the first thing you might notice is that your PDF disappeared. The reason is because our global visibility settings are on gray snap others, and PDFs can't be grayed the way most other objects can. So we just need to change our visibility settings to say show snap others. This will give us access to our snapping points without accidentally selecting the document or moving it around. And everything that we draw for the venue, we're just going to make sure it goes on this venue layer, which we can see is active with the check mark. There are many ways to draw a room. So I'm going to show you one, which is using 2D geometry, where all I need to do is basically make the footprint of a room. And you'll see I'm just getting my snapping points here for this. And let's do one more here. So I can shift click to grab all of these rectangles, and we're going to add them together to create one large surface. So modify menu, add surface. Now you'll see we have a single polygon selected. We could either create walls from this shape, or I'll show you an event design plugin called Create Room. And what this will do is create all the walls and the floor in one step. It also gives us the chance to create a class and do some classing organization here. So on the walls, we're going to create a new class, and let's call this venue-wall. That dash or hyphen signifies that this is going to be a child object, and that will make a little more sense here in the future as we build a few more of these. We're also going to put the floor into a class called venue floor, venue floor, and we'll hit OK. So I'm going to accept the rest of these defaults and just hit OK here. And you'll see if I rotate my view, we're actually starting to build a 3D model behind the scenes. All of these components live on the venue layer, and the PDF can be turned off down the road, and we can control that visibility in viewports and saved views. Now the only other component I'm going to add to my venue model here would be some doors. And the first thing I want to do is turn off this slab so that I can see the PDF underneath a little more clearly. So I'm going to pop over to my Classes tab, and I'll just find the venue floor nested in here. And I'm just going to turn that guy off for now. Here we can see our PDF and our walls. Now there is a door tool in the Building Shell toolkit right about here. And this is going to put a parametric object onto our drawing that we can modify and customize after the fact. The key point here is I want to see, when I'm placing this into an actual wall object, I want to make sure I'm getting that little red highlight. So my first click tells me that I'm in the wall, and then my second click using my mouse sets the orientation. And there we go, we have a door in the wall. I can go around the room, adding doors this way, point, point, and just a few more here. Oops. And point. Let's go over here and look at what I did. Let's just put that there. Fantastic. What's this? Another door. Let's find our door tool. I'm going to click in the center. Now obviously that is not the right width. So again, this is the power of a parametric object. We can go over here and we have all kinds of settings from jams to thresholds to trims. But what we're going to set here is 1, the width. So let's make this 6 feet. No, that's not right. Let's make this 8 feet wide. Great. And then we just need to change from being a single part to a bipart. And there's our door. Over on this end of the room is a similar door. So I'm going to start by creating a copy of that. Or so I thought. As long as I'm getting that red insertion, those should be in the walls. But look at that. I did not. Oh, wrong keyboard shortcut. It is Option click on a Mac. There we go. And then I just need to make sure that's hitting this wall. Boom. So you'll see in a 3D view, we now have door objects in the walls. And then, since there's some doors on this end, let's go ahead and plop those in there. Door tool, center. I'm going to change my settings here. Let's try 6 feet. Let's say bipart. And that looks pretty good. I'm going to option drag this over to here. And there's a copy. So if I select both of these, let's use this Move by Points tool. The second mode, which is Move and Duplicate. I'm going to leave our object retention mode on and say duplicates 1. Now we can just go point to point. Point to point. 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 And one last one. Point. Point. So with that all being done, we should actually have a 3D model with parametric walls and parametric door objects. And then since this is our base venue, let's go ahead and save this by going to File, Save As. I'm going to go to my desktop and just call this SES-1 and hit OK. So the next thing we'll look at is some room setup tools. Let's start with the stage. And to create this, I'm going to do the same 2D geometry trick that we did for the room. So I'll select my rectangle tool, make sure I'm in my corner to corner mode, and I'm just going to draw a shape to represent that. I'm going to go up to the Event Design dropdown, and we're going to find this Create Stage command. And here I can set the stage height, I can set the standard stage deck width and depth. We can also do some classing from here, so let's take this opportunity to create a new class and call this Venue Stage. And I'm just going to accept the rest of the defaults and hit OK. There you'll see it's populated that space with 30 stage deck objects, and it's put them in the proper class. And for each one of these objects, you'll see it is a hybrid plug-in style object. So all these parameters can be set from things like the understructure to the 2D attributes, 3D attributes. We'll see some railing details. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's select my back row of decks here, and I'm holding down the Shift to select multiple. And I'm just going to add a back railing to those, maybe like that. Now it actually looks like I missed one, so here's a great use. Yeah. So here's a great use of the eyedropper tool, where I can pick up the settings from that one, and I can paste them onto that deck. There you go. So back in my overhead view, venue stage. Let's go ahead and make that class active before I add stairs. So activate class. You'll see venue stage is now my active class, which means anything that I place at this point will populate into there. So let's find the stair tool. I can click a stair onto the stage. I'm just going to accept these defaults for now, and you'll see this has also created a plug-in object that can be modified. So if I want that length to be a little longer, again, all the 2D, 3D attributes can be set here. I can put railings on and this sort of thing. Now I'd like to maybe mirror that to the other side of the stage, and I see I don't have a center line yet. So let's take this opportunity. I'm going to go to my line tool. I'm going to look for a smart point maybe on this corner, and a smart point maybe on this corner. And you'll see that will give me a midpoint start point, which is good. And then I can use that to draw a line that intersects the room, like so. Now I'm going to convert this by going to Modify, Guides, and Make Guide. And that does three things. One, it classes it into a Guides class. Two, it locks it so that it can't be moved around. And three, it's actually changed the pin style to a faint dotted sort of thing. So I'm going to use that as my reference to mirror these stairs using the mirror tool, which is the equals key. And I just need to draw a line to define the plane to mirror across. And there we go. Now we have two sets of stairs on the stage. What else could we add? Maybe let's add a riser to this thing. So if I go to the rectangle tool and I double click, I can actually set some parameters. So I could say 8 feet, 8 feet. I'm going to use the center point and position at next click. So let's just hit OK there. I can place that there. I can grab it again, extrude it 24 inches. And there you'll see we have a riser. Maybe let's make this a slightly darker color. And there you go. So if that's our stage, let's go ahead and add some seating to this room. I'd like to put this on a new layer. So currently all that is on venue. I'm going to accept that and just make a new layer here. And this time, instead of right-clicking, I'll show you that there's a drop down in the top. We'll hit new, and let's call this Seating A. Now, one method to do chairs would be to locate an appropriate symbol, make sure that we've got symbols selected here. I'm going to search for event chair. Let's select one of these. Number 3 looks good. So if I double click it, we'll see it's active now. It's attached to my tool here. I'm going to zoom in somewhere about here. My first click will place the chair. My second click will set the rotation. I'm going to show you a really effective use of the Move by Points tool. So if I activate that tool, go to my second mode, Move and Duplicate, I'm going to make sure that Object Retention mode is on and Selection Retention mode is on. And if I wanted a row of 12 chairs, maybe I tell this I want 11 duplicates. And I just need to duplicate from that corner to that corner. And if I wanted rows spaced at maybe 3.5 feet, I could do 3.5 feet, enter. And just like that, I have a cluster of chairs, 12 by 12. Now if I wanted to duplicate that cluster, I might do something like Alt drag or Control drag on Windows, Alt drag on Mac to create a copy. And then I could do a Command M, which is move. And if I wanted an 8-foot aisle, I could say -8 feet. Boom. And then if I wanted to duplicate that section with that spacing, maybe I go back to my Move by Points tool. Maybe I tell it I want 1 duplicate. and we want to go from that insertion point to that insertion point. And there you'll see we have 288 3D symbols. You'll also see I've got this in the wrong class, so let's fix this before I go any further. I'm going to create a new class for these and call it maybe venue chairs. Hit OK. And then I just need to duplicate those to the other side of the room. So let's go back to our mirror tool or hit equals. And I just need to define the center line again. And there we go. So that's one method to duplicate chairs and make some seating sections. But I'd like to show you another option. So let's go back to this. Let's hit new. I'm going to make a new seating plan. Call this one seating B. I'm temporarily going to turn seating A off. And maybe we need a banquet set for this room. So let's go to our rectangle tool. I'm going to use the center out. And in the instance that maybe we want to populate all this with tables, I would draw a box. I could right click, create objects, and under object type, let's do a seating section. And then we'll show the properties and delete the source shapes. Let's see what we get. So here we can set what type of symbol we want to use for our seating section. We can set how it's going to line things up. Actually, at this point, I think I'm just going to hit OK, and let's see what we get. It's going to be a little crowded, so let's go back to the settings. And again, maybe our seat spacing is 3 feet, and maybe our row spacing is 3 feet. Section information, we can have it number seats. So maybe I want to show some numbering. I'm just going to accept all that and hit OK. There you'll see we have 3 foot by 3 foot offset rows, numbered, and populating the space that we drew. There's also an aisle tool. So if I knew that I wanted an aisle going up through the center, making sure to grab my smart points, we could do something like that. Again, I can come back and we have all kinds of justification options, offset, shifting, aligning, left to right, center out. Lots of customization options here. Let's see what that does. Well, so this could be tinkered with to your liking. And again, this aisle could be deleted and it will just go back to populating all that. So what we've got now is 2 different seating plans on 2 different layers. So seating A looks like this. Seating B looks like this. We have everything classed correctly. Oop, no we don't, because this is venue stage. So let's do a new class here. Let's call this venue tables. And then with that being selected, let's go ahead and save this. Do a save as, and this time desktop, let's call it SES-2. Save. And there you go. All right, guys, now it's time for the good stuff. And before we start adding sound and lights and video and all that, we need to create a design layer that's going to hold all of these production elements. So let's go back to our navigation palette. Make sure I'm on my design layers tab. And let's do the hamburger, new. Let's create a layer called Production A. And I'll just hit OK. So let's look at our layers here. Production A should be active. My seating is probably off. Let's turn the seats on there. I'll leave everything else the way it is. Just make sure Production A is your active layer. Now, first things, let's put in some truss. So you'll notice over in this rigging tool set, there are two separate truss tools. One's called a straight truss tool, and the other is called the truss tool. So each one of these kind of has its own place and its own use. And today I'm going to demonstrate both of these in our setup file. So the truss tool, this one here, I like to think of as the modular truss tool because this places sections of truss into the drawing. And these are like pre-built real-world items. You'll see in the truss symbol drop down here. We see all these manufacturers. I had already been digging around in here, so you can see I've got Tyler 12 by 12, and I just grabbed a piece of, let's see, maybe a standard bolt 10 foot. So double clicking that makes it my active piece of truss. So that's active showing up here. And then you'll see some options. These can also be placed, well, we'll say that the things in here, the components can be curved pieces, straight pieces, or hinges. And then depending on what you have selected, you can also place them either horizontally, vertically, or at custom hanging angles. So today we're just going to do this normal style. So I've got that selected. And I'm just going to come down here. I'm going to start on my center line. And I'm going to go this direction. And you'll see, so it's placed one piece of truss. And as I hover over it, since I'm in this tool, you see the little red line? That's telling me that it's going to connect to the end. So as long as I'm seeing that line, I can just click, and it's going to add another stick. Again, these are modular sticks of truss, and I can just snap across here so that I have 6 pieces there. Now, the good thing about this truss tool is, well, one, they can be reported on. So every piece of truss and block and corner block and hinge that I put in my drawing, we can create a report on all of these because they're single independent objects. But that's also the downside. Since they're independent, you know, if I grab one of these pieces and I try to move it, it doesn't know that I want to move the entire system. It thinks I maybe just want to move that block. So I'm going to undo that. So you just need to be aware of that. But they've created some tools to assist you. So you'll see if I have one of these pieces of truss selected. Over in the object info palette, we can do like select system objects. So that'll grab everything that's attached to it, both sticks of truss and any other gear that we've attached. Or if I have one selected, I could do change trim height of system. So let's go ahead and do that. And I'm going to change this trim height to 20 feet and hit enter. So now if I spin up into a 3D, there you go. Fantastic. Now, when I have these all selected, notice in the object info palette it says we have 6 truss objects. We'll see that it's in a class called venue stage. So this is a mistake and we need to create a new class. So we'll do it right from this drop down. And this is going to be a new class. And everything that we've created so far has been what we refer to as a container class. And these are mainly for organization and visibility. There's also what we call component classes, and those are used for controlling the graphic attributes of everything that assigns to it. But this is going to be our first production class. So everything that I build for this is going to have the prefix event, and I'm just choosing that as a generic prefix. A lot of users like to put their company name in there or maybe their initials. But the goal of this is that it's going to be easy to find and it's going to be all grouped together in our navigation palette. So let's call this guy event-truss. Seems good to me. Now we have 6 truss objects in the truss class, in the right layer, at the right height. And let's go ahead and activate that newly created class. You'll see venue stage is still active. So let's just right click here, activate class. Now event truss is active, and anything that we place will go into that class. So like I mentioned, these are independent objects currently. So let's look at converting this to a hanging position. And this is an optional step that doesn't have to be done, but it does have its advantages. So we're going to create one from this truss. I'm just going to make sure that everything is selected here. And let's convert that to a hanging position. Now, first dialog here is saying, do you want to create a hanging position for each selected object, which in this case is 6 sticks of truss, or do you want to create a single hanging position from all of them? And obviously, these are bolted together, so this is a single hanging position. And then please give it a name. How about downstage LX? Now, this last pop-up here is saying, do you want to use the geometry or create a symbol? Now, if we had a bunch of the same size sticks of truss, that would be a case to maybe use a symbol. So we could dive into that later. But for this case, and most times, if you only have 1 or 2, we're going to use geometry. And I wish I would have selected always do this, but what can you do? So now you'll see we have a hanging position object. And the advantages of this are a few. Let's see. We can do some auto numbering. So there's auto numbering by hanging position. We can also create a hanging position summary. So you'll see in our lighting thing, there's a hanging position summary. We'll be able to attach and detach objects easily. And in 2022, they keep adding to this functionality. So any AV object, a projector, a speaker, anything that's got a position field can be attached to this hanging position, and it will populate and it will stick to it. So this is, as we build our rig here, you'll see how that functions. So that is our hanging position for a downstage truss. Now, the other tool we'll use to build our upstage truss, go back to my rigging tool set here, is the straight truss tool. This places parametric objects into our drawing. And unlike the other truss tool, the modular truss tool, where a manufacturer has dictated the size and the shape, this is freeform. This creates objects that are fully customizable. So any shape or length that we can imagine, we can place in the drawing, which is both good and bad. So as far as tool modes, with the straight truss tool selected, you'll see there really aren't any because we're going to edit all the information in the object info palette when we're done. So if we know what dimensions we want ahead of time, we could enter them here, the height, width, and the connection interval. But again, for our case, I'm just going to draw it and then we'll tinker with it after the fact. So to draw a truss, you literally just need to draw a line. And I'm going to go just from air wall to air wall, making sure to see my smart points there, object horizontal, and I'm just going to hit place. Now over in the object info palette, we'll see it is in the correct class, in the correct layer. My Z height, it's still sitting on the floor, so let's make this 20 feet, 20, enter. And I could roll up to a 3D view and check that out. There we go. And again, fully customizable over here. So the profile, whether it's a triangle or a box, the height, the width, the chord spacing. I'm going to make this, let's make it 15-inch truss. So 15, 15, missed. I'm going to not have top lacing. Again, this is both the power and the Achilles heel of this is that we can make the truss look like however we want. And then we need to give it a position name, so maybe we'll call this Upstage LX. And you'll see that'll carry over to our other objects as we place them. And, you know, as with the other stick module, this also has full 3D rotation. So we can set different angles here on all three axes. Just undo that. You can also roll it up and down stage and do different combinations of 3D rotation. But let's just undo, get out of all that stuff. If we had time today, I'd love to do some raked lighting positions and create a schematic view, but we'll see. We'll see how we do. So let's just go back to my top plan. And I'm just going to go back to my page, escape. And now we can move on to hoists. So there are tools. If you were looking around in the rigging tool set, you'll see like a house rigging point tool and a structural member tool. And if we had time today, I'd love to go into those, but that's beyond the scope of this project for sure. So we're just going to insert some hoists into the drawing here and let the house riggers figure out how they're going to hang them. Let's start with creating a class for these hoists. So here's a little tip. If we go into our navigation, go over to our classes tab. If I find that event truss, if I right click here and do new, it'll start us off with that event prefix. So let's call this event hoist. There we go. And we'll activate that new class. And now everything that we place will be populated into that. We'll find the hoist tool in the rigging tool set right here. And it's asking what symbol we want to insert. So kind of like the truss, this is sorted by either manufacturer or by type. And I'm just going to go with a standard. Let's go with that. The only other thing I'm going to configure is let's save a step, and I'm going to number these as we go. So I hit the automatic numbering preferences. I want to give each one a unique hoist ID. And I'm going to start with 1 and increment by 1. And what that will do is, since this is selected, as I click my hoist onto the drawing, it will increment their numbers. So hoist tool is selected, right class is active. You'll see I get this red connection line. And one of the nice things about this is that it's going to center it on the truss. So as long as I'm seeing that connection line, I'm going to be good. So there is 4 1-tons on that stick of truss. I'm just going to select them, do an align and distribute, insertion point. There we go. That way they're nice and evenly spaced. I think that should be plenty of lift for 60 feet of truss. Let's do that same thing maybe back here. Hoist tool. I'm just going to pick some spots in the middle here. There we go. Then I'll just do the same thing. And that is, so that align distribute that I just did is Control equals on Windows or Command equals on the Mac. And then I can just distribute by insertion point. Okay. Fantastic. We can check that in 3D. Everything should be all nice and attached. And it is. And then I should mention that the advantage to using all these tools and connecting all this truss correctly and getting those little red line connections is if you have any intention of taking this to Braceworks. So if you're not aware, we have a module called Braceworks, and that performs structural analysis of rigging systems. So if you haven't seen that, I encourage you to check it out. But best practice is, as we're attaching hoists and lighting things and different pieces of truss, is you always want to be seeing those little red connection lines and that lets you know that you're making a connection in the software. So I will go back to a top view. In preparation for a rig plot that we're going to make down the road, I'm going to go ahead and add some, we need to add some labels to this. So I'm going to go to my Magic Wand tool, also known as the Select Similar tool. And now I can see I have 8 hoist objects selected, and I can still see they're in the right class. One thing that we can do is when we go to make that rig plot, we're going to want some sort of reference point for the floor markout. So that reference point in Vectorworks is the Hoist origin, which is this little tool right here. So by selecting that, and we can have more than one in the drawing, but this will place, we can put this reference point wherever we think it's convenient. So in my case, if I were here, I might set it in line with that back wall on my center line. And there you can name them. I could name this Upstage Center. If this wasn't a temporary stage, I might put it on the downstage edge of the stage. But hey, totally up to you. Whatever you think is convenient. But once we have that origin in there, now if I go back to my Select Similar, grab all the hoists, I can tell them their reference point is Upstage Center. And then when I hit that Show Measurement label, you'll see this is where we can get our dimensions in relation to that point. So that is 38 feet back from the wall and 9 feet and some change. Obviously, you can set up the rounding and all that. For now, I'm just going to turn that off because I want to show you what are called data tags. And these guys were introduced years ago, and they're really, really powerful for extracting data. And it works on all kinds of objects, and they are fully customizable. So we're going to put a data tag onto these hoists, and you'll find the data tag in the Dims and Notes tool set. Down here, find your data tag tool. And first thing we need to do is define a style. So data tag style here. Let's go. You'll see we have architecture styles. These are pre-made, but again, since all of these are customizable, most people use this as a starting point, and they duplicate and they build their own. So I'm just going to grab a default hoist label, maybe this guy here. If I double click it, it's now active. And then in my tool modes, I could either place it on a single object, selected objects, or I'm going to put it on this middle mode, which is all eligible objects. So you'll see as I hover around the screen here, all my hoists turn red. It tells me that that's an eligible object for that data tag. So really all I need to do is just click at this point, and it plops them there. Since they're selected, I can just drag them all over right now. And then since we're going to want to control the visibility of that, we'll see I have 8 data tag objects. Let's do new class, event, hoist label. How's that? Nice. All right. So I think that's it for now. Let's just turn hoist label off. I'll probably even gray hoist. I'm going to click on none, make that the active class. Let's just go with that. All right. This would be a good time to save. So I'm going to go up to File. Let's do a Save As. And let's call this SES-3. All right, is everybody still with me? Awesome. So now it's time for our lighting. And in order to give us a target to light, I'm going to explore the Resource Manager. Mine's window shaded up here at the top, so if I just hover over it, it pops up. If it's not doing that, it's Control-R on Windows or Command-R on a Mac, and that will show it and hide it. You might remember from the Getting Started seminar that the Resource Manager is where you find any and all assets that are in your drawing or online in our databases. And most importantly, I just need to make sure that this filter for you is either on symbols or all resources. But again, the resource manager can have worksheets, tiles, hatches, fills, styles, any Vectorworks assets. So make sure it's on symbols. And then just go to the search bar and let's do human figure. Here you'll see we have some band people. And these are mostly 3D. Some band people, some men, women, children, some faint people, some silhouette people. The one that I'm looking for is probably going to be, I think maybe female 10. Female 10. Yeah, so if I double click her, that makes it active. And then I can just zoom in on the stage here. My first click will place her. And then my second click does the rotation. So let's have her pointed there. And I can check that in 3D. And you'll see I have a person, and she's actually probably in the stage. Yep, just like that. So if we look in the object info palette, it says we have a 3D symbol. It says it's in the class none. So let's fix that right away. Let's put this in a class called event people. And then I'm going to make sure edit properties after creation's off. We'll hit OK. And then she's in the stage because it's a 4-foot stage and she's currently at 0 feet. So I just need to make that say 4 feet or 48 inches. Great. Now I have a 3D person in the right class at the right height. Just like that. And it is driving me nuts that deck doesn't match. So let's go to this eyedropper tool. And I'm just going to, let's just force select this and paste that here. There we go. It's driving me nuts. All right. Back to this. Now we have something to point at, and let's just add some fixtures. So let's go to the lighting device or the lighting tool set, and there's a lighting device tool. And then once that's selected, you'll see this has a drop-down kind of resource manager, much like the truss, where we can look through all different manufacturers. There are hundreds of manufacturers. And this can also be searched. So I could do source 4. And I'm just going to look for a nice generic ellipsoidal here. Like how about a 26 degree? So if I double click that, you'll see it's active on my tool here. And then I'm just going to do my first click, making sure I get that red line to connect. And my second click, I'm going to point it at the person. And then I'm going to use my mirror tool by hitting equals to find that center line. And I have a set of fixtures. If I select those, and look in the object info palette, we can see it's in class none. So let's continue our organization and make a new class here. Call this event, maybe lighting fixtures dash lighting fixtures. And we'll hit OK. And then you'll also notice this did pick up the right height, and you'll notice it also picked up that position name, the downstage electrics. So now we just need to define what these fixtures are going to focus on, and we have a special tool for that. That special tool is called the focus point tool. So if I make that active and define where I want those lights to focus, and I click right there, it's going to ask me for a name. So let's call that downstage center. And then for a height, 4-foot stage, I'm going to go with that, 8 feet. Love it. And there you go. You'll see in the object info palette, we have a focus point. We'll see it's in a class called none. and on the right layer, but let's fix this class here. So let's do new class, and this is actually going to be our first, let's see, event-focus. This is going to be our first component class, and you'll see what I mean here. So make sure that edit properties after creation is selected, hit OK, and that'll pull up our class settings dialog. Here you can see our class name, event focus, and then the magic sauce is this use it creation button here. So for this focus class, I'm going to make sure that use it creation's on, and then anything that's assigned to that class will get these attributes. So for style, maybe I want that to be none, and then pen, maybe I want that to be kind of a bright color, so let's go with this magenta. And then we'll just hit OK. Now it says, do you want the selected objects to use the graphic attributes of the new class? And I'm going to say, yes, I do. And you'll see right away, since it's in that focus class, it took on those focus attributes. So now all I need to do is assign the lights to the focus. So if I grab the two lights, and I find the focus field, and I say downstage center, they should now be focused, and I can check that by hitting draw beam. There we go. So what you're seeing there is the beam angle and the field angle of the selected lighting device at that distance, at that target. And there are a few benefits to using a focus point. For one, if you move a focus point, oops. If I move that focus point, oh my gosh. I'm just hitting some undos. What is going on? Again, if you move that focus point, the lights will follow. And if you move the hanging position, the lights will follow. So I'll just undo. Sorry guys, I don't know what happened there. All right, there we go, finally. Another nice thing about the focus point is it can be used in conjunction with this photometric grid. So I can actually draw a grid across the stage. I'll just accept the defaults there. This will show us our lighting levels at any given point on the stage. So I'll just delete that to get rid of it. Yeah, so that's the nice thing about a focus point. So let's just duplicate that a few times. Let's make 3 downstage. So I'm going to select it. I'm going to right click and make sure that class is active so that anything else I make takes those attributes. I'm going to use the move by points. I'm going to move and duplicate 1 from the center here to maybe right there seems good. Now it's incremented the letter to DSD. I actually want that to be downstage right. And then I can either mirror or just, let's do the mirror. Right there, define that center plane. And then we'll call that downstage left. All right. Now I just need to create some more fixtures for those focus points. So let's select those. I'm going to turn the beam off for now. And then this is going to get really easy because all I need to do is that same move by points. I have these 2 lights selected. I'm going to right click to make sure that class is active. And then I'm just going to go from that insertion point to there. And I have a pair of lights. And instead of downstage center, I want that downstage right. And then again, I can do the same thing from there to there. And let's call that downstage left. One of the commands that we added in 2022 is this right-click command called Select Lighting Devices by Instrument Type. And then there's a sister to it, Select Lighting Devices by Position. Now, either one in this case is going to do the same thing. But once I have all 6 selected, I can turn all the beams on, potentially. See what that looks like. And then actually, if I rotate up into a 3D view, you'll see that these are, let's turn those beams back off. This is actually casting light on our stage with the correct beam angle and field angle. So that's good. I wanted to quickly draw your attention to the accessory tool. So right next to the lighting device tool is the lighting accessory tool. And this is where we can set like scrollers or barn doors or top hats. So resource manager, lots of options here. I'm just going to grab a generic 6.25 top hat. You'll see if I click on a light, it will add it right on. You can also remove it from a light the same way. Or if I right click and select all these devices, I could go to add and add to selected. So now all 6 of those lights have that accessory. Accessories are also data rich, which means they can be reported on in a worksheet and inventoried and counted and such and so forth. So those are lighting accessories. The last thing, let's start, well, we need to start assigning some data to these lighting devices. So multiple ways to achieve this. One powerful command is going to be the spotlight numbering. So make sure that you have all your fixtures selected. I'll go back to this mode. I'm going to double check that they're all in the right class. Great. So spotlight drop down, spotlight numbering command. And this is a really powerful and robust tool here because it works not just on lighting fixtures, but chain hoists and chairs and data tags and all kinds of objects. So spotlight numbering is a great tool. Depending on what you have selected, depends or determines what options you have here. Since I have lighting devices selected, these are my lighting device options. And we can set one or all of these fields at once. Today, we're just going to set a few of them, and we need a unique identifier for each of these LECOs. So let's do channel. Some people use unit ID, some people fixture ID, whatever. So we're going to use channel, so I'm going to make sure it has a check mark by it. And then I'm going to tell it where I want it to start. Let's make these 101s. It will automatically increment 1. And let's do left to right. While we're in here, we might as well set a few more things. We could do maybe circuit number. So if I throw a check next to that, so maybe our Sockopex, we could label that A, and it'll start with A1, and it'll increment by 1 until it gets to, well, we could limit restart at 6. So when the fan out's full, that will restart, and this is also left to right. What else could we do here? I guess DMX and universe. So let's do universe 1. I'll apply the same numbering to all the units. And then DMX. Let's do that and that. And I just realized I don't think I set my DMX mode, so we might have a problem with that. But I think everything else is right. DMX, we'll just see what happens. Left to right. So I'm just going to hit OK. Tells us that it did its numbering. And then to spot check this, let me just go down to like the last light here. And I see it's channel 106. Great. Universe 1. So my DMX addresses didn't work. And this is a good lesson for you. So in order for it to patch lighting devices, it has to know how many channels it is. And we set that with the fixture mode. Now, in the case of a moving light where you've got basic and extended and all that, it makes sense. Since this is a Lico, there's really only one fixture mode. So I just need to tell it that it's that mode. And what that does is that populates this DMX footprint field. So now, if I went back to that spotlight numbering tool, and I don't need to set any of this other stuff, so I'm going to remove the check, remove the check, remove that check, and just do DMX address starting at 1, left to right. Boom. Now let's check that. There we go. Universe 1, address 6. Very, very good. So, it's great that we've got all that data on there, but what good is having it if we can't display it? So we need to create a label legend for these Licos. And to do this, we go to the Spotlight dropdown, and there's a label legend, and we will go to the Label Legend Manager. So, empty file has no label legends in it, so we just need to add. And then we have all these fields that we can add to our label legend. Let's start with giving it a name. I like to start mine with LL for label legend. So maybe this is LL Lico, unlike LL Cool J. And what do we want to show? I definitely want to show the channel. Let's make this a little bigger. Definitely want to show the channel. Maybe we show that circuit number. We could show the focus. So let's hit focus there. All right, so it's going to use that symbol, that name, those fields. We can also set a container. So maybe I want the channel to be in a rectangle. Or maybe I don't, and maybe I want the circuit number to be in a rectangle. Let's try that. I'll just hit OK. And so we've created, or we've defined which fields it's going to have, but we really haven't configured the appearance. So we need to edit that 2D layout. And here you'll see the fields that we added: channel, circuit number, and focus. Here is our light, and then we just need to line this up to our liking. So I'm going to stick channel, probably in dead center of that thing. Focus, maybe I'll put down here by the barrel. And we can even make this, let's add some flare. Let's make that blue. On this one, I'm going to make sure I grab the square, that rectangle, and the circuit number. I'm going to grab a snapping point there, and then maybe put this back by the cap. And then maybe I'll make that text red. All right, so that is kind of the graphic layout of that label legend. And I should just be able to exit. I should be able to right-click, grab all those devices, right-click again, assign legend to those devices, and there's my label legend, Lico. I'll hit OK, and there's our data. We can see our focus is on the barrel. We can see our circuits on the cap. We can see our fixtures in the middle. Obviously, this is fully customizable to whichever fields you think are most appropriate and however you want this laid out. But this is just one example, and that's how it works. So there's our static lights. Let's look at adding some movers to the upstage. Different lights, different workflow. There we go. We'll go back to the lighting device tool. We'll go back to the resource selector. And this time, how about Viper? And we can see all the different Vipers. Let's do a Viper profile. Double click this again. Now for this guy, again, we're going to do this a little differently. I still have lighting device, lighting fixtures active, so that's good. I'm going to make sure I see that red line. And then I'll place that. Now for this one, I could either control drag and make 6 copies because we're going to align these a little differently. So maybe I'll just do 5 there like that. And then kind of doesn't matter what the spacing is because I'm going to show you the align and distribute tool. So this is different than the regular align distribute command because this tool lets you define a line. So we can put those movers along a predetermined path. In our case, I think I'm going to line it up with the edge of the stage. There you go. You'll see in the object info palette, it should be assigned to the upstage electrics. Very good. And then if I check that in 3D, there are my fixtures. Now, focus options on this. Let's look at a different way of doing that. Since I have those selected, I'm going to do a right click and focus lighting devices. And I have a few options here. Let's see. The first would be, well, I could pick focus. So if I just hit that and click here, it's going to take all the lights and move them to that focus point. Or if I select those, send them back home, we can also just pan and tilt manually. So there's our tilts. There's the pans. And as you probably just saw there, we can even do fanning from here. So I could fan those in. Now I could either create focus points when I hit OK or not. I'm, for this instance, not going to. I'm just going to hit OK. And you'll see that it spins all the yokes and the bodies of the moving lights, or the heads, the yokes and the heads, to kind of match that focus point. So there you go. And then we're going to assign them some data, kind of like we did the other moving lights. Let's start with making sure that we set the fixture mode first this time. And again, this is where you tell it basic or extended. Let's go extended. You'll see that populated our DMX footprint to 34 channels. Let's go to the spotlight numbering. So this time I really just want to number them. So let me channel, and this could be done manually. Also, there's a manual mode, but left to right, maybe I start those at 201 and just hit OK. Great. And the reason I needed to do that first, because this next command, patch, under Spotlight, DMX patch, this wants those to have a number. That way it knows where to assign them. So select those, do universe and address. Maybe I'll make this universe 2, address 1, patch. So there you can see our DMX footprint of 34. We can see a graphical representation of that universe and how many channels we've used. And then we can see our universe and our address here in this dropdown. So that is another method to patch fixtures. I'll just hit OK. So we've got all of our data in there. And then kind of like we did for the Lecos, we'll make a label legend for these. So with them selected, we'll go to Spotlight, we'll go back to the label legend. We'll go to the label legend manager. There's our Leco one. Let's make a new one. So we'll add, I'm going to call this LL Viper. And the reason that we're making a new one is because we want different data. Moving light obviously doesn't have all the attributes of conventional lights. And then again, it has others. So maybe this one I want to have universe address for sure. I do want channel number. Yeah, right above it. And really that, I think that'll be enough. And then I'll just make sure I've got the right symbol down here, which I did. We'll just hit OK. Again, so that added the fields, but hasn't actually configured our layout. So with Viper selected, edit 2D layout. Again, I'll just grab channel to the middle. I'm going to grab universe address. Maybe I'll stick it on this side. Maybe I'll give it different color. And I'll exit that symbol. So those are all selected. I can just hit right click, assign legend, label legend Viper, and boom. Here we have universe address, fixture numbers, that, there you go. So you can bask in your lighting plot at this point. And this is probably also a good point to go ahead and save. So let's go to File, Save As, and we are up to SES-4. Fantastic. Escape. 6.5. All right, next on the agenda are some video tools. And first things first, let's create a class to contain those video elements. We'll see lighting fixtures as active, so I'm just going to go to that drop down, create a new class. I'll call it Event Video. Don't need to edit the properties, and I'll just hit OK. So that created the class. Now I just need to make it active. There you'll see Event Video is my active class, and anything that I place will go into there. The video tools show up in the Event Design tool set, and we'll just kind of tackle these one at a time, starting with the video screen tool. And this is your standard front or rear projection screen sort of arrangement. So the first click sets the base, second click sets the rotation. I'm just going to kind of rough that in there. And then I'll accept all these defaults, and we'll come back. I'm going to go ahead and spin right up to a 3D view, and we'll take a look at what we've got here. All right. So you see in the Object Info palette, our video screen is selected. And first things first, you might notice that's sitting on the ground. So let's give the screen a height. So maybe the screen's at 8 feet. This is where we can control whether it's a front or rear projector, the screen aspect ratio. So let's bump this up to the 2000s and make it a 16:9. We can control stock size. So maybe I'll do a 20-foot wide screen. We can set, border widths. It's all customizable. We can set how it's supported. So in this case, we need goalpost legs. And then with those goalpost legs, we can add a dress kit. And again, all these little pieces are customizable. And then you start to get into down here some of the projection settings. So we can either set the projector based on a lens or distance. And actually on this one, I'm going to go to distance. And then if I go to my top view, that'll allow me to drag this projector. I want it to live on that truss. Maybe like that. And then to make sure I connect it, I'm just going to move it off. There we go. Make sure I'm getting my red connection line. So now you'll see if I select the hanging position, I get the little caret saying it's connected. And if I move that hanging position, that projector is attached. Oops. So, back to the projector settings. Now, vertical position is going to be rigged. Let's just go see what we got in 3D. Might be a little close to the truss. So let's make the rigged height 18 feet. 18 feet. Fantastic. This classes button, super handy. So what this is going to do is break down this into component classes. So the screen as a whole lives in this class that we created called Event Video. But we have the option here to break down all the different elements of that video screen into its unique class so that we can control either the labels or the projection cones or any of that sort of stuff. So I'm just going to accept the defaults here and hit OK. And you'll see now in our classes there are a whole bunch of video things, And we can turn off and on different elements by controlling that. So that's the essence of that tool. I'm just going to mirror it to the other side. So hit my equals key. We can actually mirror this 3D. As long as I draw a line across the center there. Boom. Pair of projectors. So that is a single projector screen. And then we also have a blended screen tool. So if I make that guy active, you'll see that I get a little preview of the size of that screen. That is going to be too wide. So let's go to my preferences. Maybe a 45 foot would be a little more appropriate. Height, make it 11'3" to match my side screens. I'm just going to accept all the rest of this for now. There you go. You'll see now I have a 45-foot thing. And when I go to place it up here, I'm watching for that connection line. So again, the first click sets the base. Second click sets the rotation. And there you go. You'll see in our object info palette we have a blended screen selected. And in the projection settings, again, we can control what kind of projector it is. And this is really where the power comes in. So if this is a 16:9 projector with a 1920 by 1080 output, and instead of distance, let me do a lens, because if you know your exact fixed lens, you can put it in here. Or if it's a zoom, you can figure out your zoom range. So if you had a 1.5 to 1.8 zoom lens, you could specify exactly where in that range you need that to be. So I'm just going to pull a number out of the air, like 1.64, just arbitrarily. Vertical position, we know we want that rigged. And I remember that my trim needs to be 18 feet. And then I'm just going to insert those. Let's see how I did. All right, so one of the powerful things about this is it's going to show you, well, a few things. We'll see that the screen is attached to that rigging position, upstage LX. We'll see the overlap. Sorry. Yeah, so you'll see the overlap down here, pixels of overlap. You notice if I select this truss that those projectors are attached to it. Fantastic. And then if I wanted to go to a 3D, oh, I'm running into a little bit of problem here. So I need to add some trim to this back system. And I see I have not converted that to a hanging position yet. So this is a straight truss. Let's go ahead and convert that to a hanging position. I'll call it upstage truss. And I will just use the geometry. Again, once this is a hanging position, you get these little blue connection carrots. And the nice thing about this is now I can do change trim height. And I just wanted to add 5 feet. So if I add 5 feet, there we go. You'll see it changed the motors. It pulled the lights up with it, pulled the screen up with it too. So I actually kind of want to override that. I did my side screens at 8 feet, so I'm going to put that at 8 feet. Great. You'll see if I select the hanging position that is still attached. I'll also point out that hanging positions, one of the advantages is it will report a total weight. So every component that has a weight, it will add it up and report there. And that is a blended screen. We also have an LED screen tool. So if I just make that active And first click does the base, second click does the rotation. I always forget which way I want to get this. So horizontal count, vertical count, that's how many modules. As far as the spacing, this is the tile size. If you get your LED panels, where I get my LED panels from, these are 0.5 meter most of the time. So I can just do 0.5 M, 0.5 M. How many pixels per module? You know, maybe you, depending on your pitch, how many pixels per panel. Blocks. I actually don't want blocks, I want frames. Again, we can do all kinds of configurations here. Classes, again, let's just accept our default classes there. Hit OK. And then I'm just going to hit OK, see what we end up with. See, we have an LED screen in the object info palette. We see that its height is Z, so before I do anything, I know I need that to be 4 feet. Then let me just spin up and see what we got. All right. So much like the video screens, this is a parametric object where we can change the settings. So maybe we decide that we actually wanted that to be 8 wide. That could be modified. Notice that we get our total pixel count right there. We get our total modules right there. So this is super handy. And like everything else, if we wanted to take that and attach it to a truss, this could become a flown object, but I'm going to undo that because I think I'm just going to leave that on the stage. I'll go to overhead view and mirror that maybe across the center line here. So, pair of LED walls. Great. TV tool. This is, maybe we've forgotten about these people out here. I'm just going to drop them a screen. I'm going to accept the defaults for now. And as before, I'm just going to spin right up to a 3D so I can see what's going on. All right, first things first, we can pick our size. And what's the biggest thing we've got here? 103-inch widescreen. Let's go with that. Boom. We can add an adjustable stand. Boom. Maybe make that stand height 6 feet. All right. And again, this is fully customizable. We can set this up to be a confidence monitor or a pedestal or a stand or portrait, landscape, all that sort of thing. But for now, I'm just going to go ahead and go to my mirror tool with the equals, draw a line across the middle of the room so that now I have a mirror to that, and we're just going to have to move on. The last video tool that I wanted to touch on is the video camera tool. And this, if I place a video camera in our drawing here, let me spin around. There we go. You'll see this is a video camera object. And the nice thing about this is you'll notice that we can tell it what type of lens we want to use, what type of body we want to use. And then if I go to an activate camera, oh, he's on the ground. So 4-foot stage, so I'm going to make the camera base at 4 feet. Then again, so we can set focal length. Let's try this. And this is going to start to give us an idea. There we go. Of what that body and that zoom would be able to accomplish. And a little hint, this is going to be used to make a viewport later. So we'll just leave that for now, and there's a little teaser. With that being all our video tools, I'm just going to do Escape, Command 5, Command 6, and good time to save. So let's do a save as. And it looks like we are up to number 5. SES-5. Now let's look at the soft goods tool. I'll just zoom in here. Soft goods tool is in the event design tool set right here. You'll see we've got some different drawing modes, and I also see I've got the wrong class. So let's make a new class here. I'm going to call this event drape. I'll just accept the defaults there. Then I just need to activate that class. Let's make drape active. And now I'm just going to draw a drape line on that upstage truss. You notice I make sure I get my little connection points there. So as long as that's glowing, I'm getting a connection. Then I double click to place. I know my height is going to be more like 25 feet. And we'll configure the rest of this later. So I'm just going to hit OK right now. And without further ado, let's flip up to a 3D and see what we got. Cool. So again, object info palette, we have soft goods selected, and this is where you can configure curtain border, pipe and drape, height, width, 3D aspects can all be controlled. Stock drape width, this is nice. If you had 16-foot panels, it will do the math and tell you how many panels you need. And then you'll also notice that it has grabbed this position information, upstage truss. So that means it is actually attached to that upstage truss. So, oops, unless I delete it out. So that is one configuration of the soft goods tool. But as you saw there, it can also do ground support, pipe and drape. So I'm going to go back to that tool. And this time I'm just going to draw a path from somewhere in here. Actually, let me just come straight across to there. Double click to place. So the configuration on this one, let's go back to the top. We'll see I've got soft goods selected. This time, instead of a curtain, let's make this pipe and drape. And not 25-foot ground support. Let's make it 16 feet. And you can control different slider options. So if you've got longer sliders, bigger base plates. Again, this can all be reported on in a worksheet. Bigger base plates. And then in 3D, if we spin this up, we'll see we've got that. One of the new things we've added in 2022 is the double wall option. So if I tell this to be double wall and zoom in here, you'll see it's actually placing 2 sets of horizontals and 2 sets of drape. And the thing about that is each side can have its own graphic attributes. So if I go to the 3D options right here, I have a front and back drape line, and I can control the color of them independently. There you go. So this is a double-sided drape, and that's new in 2022. And I'm just going to mirror that across the room, and we're running short on time, so I need to keep moving along. And last, but certainly not least, let's add some speakers to our drawing here. Before we do that, we'll create a class to put them in. We'll see drape is active now. This time, just to mix it up, let's add the class from the navigation palette. Make sure you're on your classes tab on the left. Here you see all the event dash classes that we've made. So if we right click on one of these or control click on a Mac and hit new, it'll start us off with that prefix, and then I just need to add, let's call this speakers, Sometimes you'll break this up, speakers flown and speakers ground, but we're just going to make a speakers class today. And then I need to make sure that that's active. So let's do that over here. There's the class that we created. Check mark means it's active. You see it's active up here, and we're ready to place. So the speaker tool is right here in the event design tool set. And much like the truss tool and the lighting device tool, you get a little resource browser up here. So if we click on that, you'll see all these different manufacturers. So let's go find, how about a nice classic UPA. So double clicking it makes it active on my cursor here, and I'm just going to put one right next to this TV. So first click sets the base, second click sets the rotation, and we have a speaker. Like before, I'm going to rotate up to 3D, see what we're working with here. And there's our speaker sitting on the ground. You'll see in the object info palette that we've got a speaker device. You'll see some settings up here. The support, it's currently set up for flown, so I'll point out that this, like many other objects, I can pick this guy up. I get that red connection line, and it can actually be hung, so it grabbed the Z height from that, and you'll see it added it to the position here and the weight and all that. And if I highlight that field, you'll see it's attached. But that's not what I'm going to do, so let's just undo that, because we're going to, instead of flown, make this a tripod. And maybe our tripod height is 6 feet or so. There you go. We've got some class options, so like before, I can set the classes here with a prefix. Now what we could have done was actually, since we made one called event speaker, if I made this prefix event speaker, speakers, and assign that, now it's going to nest those within our class. So that's not a bad option. And then there are options for showing the coverage zone, dispersion range, they call it. But I'll point out that, this is not an acoustic analysis software. So while we may or may not be in talks with some major speaker manufacturers, this is currently just an approximation. So I'm going to turn that off, and really, I think from there, just mirror this so I can hit my equals key, draw a plane in the middle of the room, and now I have a mirror over here. So that is a single speaker, and then let's take a look at the other tool, which is the speaker array tool. I'll go back to my plan view. You might notice a trend here. I like to place in the plan view. That's going to be your best practice there. So the speaker array tool right next to the speaker, activating that, I just need to pick a spot where I'm going to put my array, and maybe I'll nestle it right here between these cones next to the stage. Again, first click sets that, second click sets the rotation. And we can either configure it before we place it or after we place it. Let's go ahead and configure it before we place it. We have the option to whether or not to grab from the catalog or the symbol definition. So we recently, within the last several years, have started using symbols, and our content team is constantly updating this. So I'm actually going to start with, you'll see we have a bumper, a speaker, and array tab. So in the speaker, I'm going to look for a symbol, and it's not going to be that. How about one of my favorites, D&B J8, J series J8, boom. So there's our J8 speaker, and then the bumper to go with that. There's the D&B, and that needs this bumper. So there's that bumper, that speaker, and then this last tab is where we configure our array. So up here is the bumper that we have. Here's the speaker that we have. We see a preview on the right here, and I just need to add this speaker to the array. So every time I click this, adds another one for, let's go with like 6 boxes. And then we can set the angles. And again, you pull this from your favorite speaker manufacturer's software, but we can set either the angle per each box, or I'm just going to grab all of these and make them all 5 degree. Nice constant curve array there. And you'll see the little preview here. You can set the overall array. So the top frame, maybe that's a 10 degree down. I'm just going to rough this in and check it in 3D. Again, you pull this from your other manufacturer software. Let's just hit OK and see what we got. So that's all configured. Just hit OK. Oops, I should have hit classes. Okay, so we'll see in the object info palette a few things. One, it's in the right class, it's in the right layer. The Z height, it's still sitting on the ground. So maybe this is a 25 feet. Configure array, we've already done. Classes, we could go ahead and set this just like we did for our others. So maybe this is event-speakers. And then when I assign that, you'll see it'll break down all the components into those classes. And then the last thing that we need to do is just hit this populate array button. You'll see that currently there's just a frame sitting on the drawing. So hitting this will pull in all those angles that we set and the overall bumper angle and populate that array based on those settings. You'll see if I go up to a 3D view, it's got the right angles. I'll use my X-ray mode with the B key. You'll see it drew 6 little symbols in there at the correct angle with the overall array at the correct height. And I'll just mirror that. So go back to my top, equals to mirror. Mirror that across the room. Then we'll just populate this array. It should have the same class settings. Let's check that. Yeah, fantastic. And then we'll just populate array. And sometimes this can take a second. But there we go. Now we have 2 arrays. So I think that's our set. Got some sound, lights, video, soft goods. Let's go ahead and save this. Go to File, Save As, and we are up to SES 6. And save. Great. All right, well, now that we have all this wonderful data in our drawing, let's start thinking about our documentation phase. And to do that, we'll set up a sheet layer to start with. Everything that we've built so far, all these layers are design layers, and that's where we do all of our drafting. Now, you might remember from the Getting Started seminar, I think you guys cover sheet layers. So that would be this tab here, and by default, there are no sheet layers, so we'll just need to make our first one. So we'll right-click in the sheet layers and hit New. So for a sheet number, I'm just going to pick S1 to start with. And since I'm going to do a room set, let's call this room set. And I'm just going to hit OK here. So what we see here is our default sheet layer, which is an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. And I want to bump this up a little bit. So the way to do that, the File menu, we'll find the page setup. And then if you have a printer hooked up to your system, it can pull the available paper sizes from that. But since I don't, I'm going to choose a size unavailable in printer. And I'll do this Ask Me Be, so 17 by 11. And I'll just hit OK. And there is our blank 11 by 17 piece of paper. So let's throw a sheet border on there. Sheet borders can be found in the Dims and Notes tool set. And it's right here. So by default, this centers on the page area. So if I click anywhere, it'll throw it into the printable area. And let's just accept all the defaults there, because we'll come back and customize this after the fact. So there it is on our piece of paper. We'll see the title block border settings over here. So let's go ahead and check out some of these options. Again, we have control of all the graphic attributes. Maybe I want a little less border there. Sheet zones and grids, maybe I don't want that. Now title block, by default, this is just a blank border, but we can import some graphics. So if we go into here, here are some pre-built ones. I can find like a USITT, hit OK. Let's just hit OK and see what we got. All right, well, first things first, I would say that title block's a little big, so I can change that scale factor. Maybe that's a 0.5 instead of a 1. Fantastic. I also see that this maybe still needs some settings filled in. So if I double click it and change the project data, we could put in, let's see, title, essentials 2022. This is a virtual. That guy. Sheet data. Throw our date in there. You get the idea. So we'll just hit OK here. This will update our title block. And then we just need to get, we'll accept that for now. And we just need to get our drawing onto this sheet layer. So to do that, let's go back to our design layer. Production A. And then we just need to make a viewport to put onto that sheet layer. And you might remember that a viewport is like a window into our design. So most viewports are made with a rectangle. So I'm going to make a rectangle. I'm going to change my mode to center out so that I can center my rectangle in the room. And I'm just going to draw a rectangle that represents what is going to be my viewport crop. And there you go. We see we have a rectangle selected. I also see it's in the wrong class. So let's fix this. I'm going to throw this into none. Actually, I didn't mean to create a new one. This just wants to be in the none class. This is the default class for Vectorworks. While I'm at it, I may as well make none my active class so that I don't make that mistake again. And then with that rectangle, I will make a viewport. So to do that, I'll go to View, Create Viewport. It's going to ask me if I want to use that object as the crop. I'm going to say yes. And then the most important thing is where it is going to create this viewport. And you'll see by default, it will throw it on a sheet layer if you have one set up. So there's the sheet layer that we just made. We can add a label and a title here. Maybe I'll just call this Plan View. Again, all this can be edited after the fact. So let's just hit OK and see what we got. Well, first thing you might notice is that our page is gone. But if I hit my X-ray key with the B button, you'll see that page is actually back behind there. So we just need to scale this guy down a little bit. So I can see the viewport is selected. Let's just mess with the scale here. Maybe at 1/8 inch. That didn't quite do it. Let's go one more chunk. Nope. Let's go one more chunk. That's pretty good. Maybe I'll just drag this up here. And then this is going to be a room set that we'll deliver to the facility so that they can set the chairs and stuff. So let's turn off some of the things. Now, I'm not going to control the visibilities from my navigation palette because that's for my drawing. Since this is a viewport, it's got its own visibility settings. So I highlight the viewport, and in the object info palette, I have layers and classes. I'll accept the layers. On the classes though, let's see. Again, here's all our event classes. And maybe we don't need the lighting fixtures. Maybe we don't need, what else here? And you can stretch this window out, make that a little easier. Don't need that. Don't really need the focus. Don't really need the truss. Let's see what we got here. You can hit this little preview button and see what you got. Ooh, okay, I see Hoist I don't need. And these component classes, I can actually just turn off the projection cones and the projectors. Let's preview that. Okay, I'll accept that. So there I have the things hidden that I don't want to see. We'll just add some annotations to this so they know where to set the chairs. Now if I just go to the measurement tool and start measuring over here, you'll see I'm getting a distance of 1.6 inches because that's measuring this piece of paper. So since this is a viewport, if I want to throw a measurement on it, I will right-click and edit the annotations of this viewport. Now that I'm in here, I can go to my dimension tool and I can start to grab some dimensions from this wall, maybe there to there, and just line it up with that. And you kind of get the idea here. Line a few more of these up. Maybe the center one. That's weird. Oh, that's right, because I just kind of arbitrarily dropped a chair in there, so maybe let's do a no fractions. I like that better. You get the idea. Maybe we'll put one from this wall to the back wall. Something like that. So you get the idea. You would annotate it in this. We'll go back to the viewport. And then if I wanted to create a chair count, I would probably do a report for that. So we would go up to Spotlight, Reports, and I'll do this Create Report command. Now there's some pre-formatted ones, and there's custom reports that we can make, and I kind of want to do both today. So let's start with a custom report. I'll do one, objects with a record of the event planning record, and I know that I want to sort these by type. So here are my available columns. Here's what's going to be in the report. We can do some functions in here, like a count, maybe add a count, maybe add an image. We'll give this a name. So this worksheet is going to be called chair count. And then I'll just hit OK, and let's see what we got. So it has opened this, which is a Vectorworks worksheet. And the first thing I need to do is I don't need every single chair listed. I want to go in here and do a summarize. There you go. You'll see we have 864 chairs. I can actually do a little stretching here. Let's do that thing. Again, this is a spreadsheet, so you can do colors and fonts and all that sort of thing. I'm just going to pare this down a little bit because I was just looking for a chair count. Delete, delete. Fine. And then I could do worksheet on drawing, and that places it on the drawing, and then I just close it here. And there's our worksheet. Maybe put that down there. Great. And then, if you remember, we did two sets. So the nice thing about setting up your title block and your viewports and all that is that now, if we just want to go to our sheet layers, we can duplicate and it'll pull most of that over. So I'll right click here. I'll hit duplicate. It will increment the sheet number. So now this is S2. And then since this is going to be our second room set, I should rename this room set B. And then while I'm in here, I should actually, let's call that one room set A. Now we just need to change the visibility so that we're not seeing the set A. So again, make sure that viewport's selected. Layers. This time we'll turn B on and A off. I'll just hit OK. Great. So there's our table set. We'll see it's got our annotations from our chairs. So I could just right click on this, edit annotations, and then I could either draw new ones or just update these. So maybe that wants to be to here. Maybe this wants to be to there. Again, you get the idea. I'm just going to maybe highlight those and delete for now. So you kind of get the idea on that. Let's see. So on this one, don't need that worksheet. Since we used a seating layout on this, I'll go back to the edit annotations. Much like the hoist labels that we used, we're going to grab a data tag for this seating area, this seating section. And that is data tag right here. And then we just need to change, currently the hoist label is my active data tag. So entertainment, seating section, here are some pre-built starter ones. This is a table count. So again, you'll see I get the hovering on the that. Table count 79, cool. So we could either have that leader line or not. I could throw another data tag in there. The nice thing about seating areas is there's a lot more information than the way that we did our chairs. Ooh, let's see what this one's like. So that threw it up there. Let's just take that leader over there. I could probably do that. So anyway, seating sections have a lot more available data and parameters that you can pull from. So the seating, the spacing, the tables, and all that. So that's the nice thing about that. Now let's make maybe a light plot sheet layer. Let me scoot this guy over. No, actually I wish I hadn't done that. Undo, undo. I'm going to just move those. Fine. Ah. I kind of wish I would have deleted that leader line too. Anyway. So again, we're going to make a light plot. So we'll do the same thing. Sheet layer, duplicate, rename. We'll call this guy light plot. Now, first thing we need to do is change the visibilities so that we can see our lights. So with that viewport selected, classes, this time we need our lighting fixtures on. Oh, maybe have the hoist grade. What else do we need to see? Truss would be good. So let's turn the truss on. See what we got. We don't want the hoist label, so event hoist label, let's turn off. And then let me go over here and just turn that seating off. Actually, I'll turn the PDF off too. Should unclutter it. All right. We'll accept that for our light plot. Now we'll just make it a little larger so that it can be read. So let's go in here and let's just edit the crop. Instead of being the whole room, I'm going to use my keyboard modifier so that this is a symmetrical scale. Make this a little smaller. Maybe move that up like there. That might be good. Edit that crop. And then you'll see that a bunch of old annotations, so I can just go in here. I'm just going to probably get rid of all those. Maybe move this up a little closer. And then, since we want this to be larger on the scale, on the paper, we just need to change the scale. Maybe try an 1/8 inch. I'll actually go to a 3/16. That seems a little better. Let's add an instrument summary tool to this. So in the lighting tool set, right here is an instrument summary tool. And then you just pick where you want to place this thing. So maybe I'll place it right there. Now, the most important thing is the build list, because this says what it's going to report on. So we want to report on maybe those. Again, accessories can be reported on. I'll probably show the counts. I'll probably show the title. Let's just hit OK, see what we got. All right, I'll accept that. And then we'll make a database for the circuit hookup. So again, back to the Spotlight reports, create report, Again, last time we did a custom. This time let's look at a pre-formatted one. Way at the bottom down here, SL stands for Spotlight. So I can show a circuit hookup database. Hit that. And that created this on my other monitor. Again, here are the fields in a standard spreadsheet format. Maybe I'll get rid of a few. We didn't use unit number. Delete that. Maybe these get a little shorter. Again, this can all be adjusted. Let me just jump out of this. And then what we'll need to do, I forgot to hit. So if I double click it, we'll place it on the drawing. I can do a little bit of scaling here, like so. All right. And then there's our circuit hookup worksheet. Now the nice thing about worksheet, if I actually open it back up, is this is a two-way link here. So if I go make this a little larger here, you'll see if I needed to change something, if I needed to change maybe fixture 102 right here, maybe I wanted to update this to be a circuit B1 for some reason. You'll see when I hit enter there, it updates our drawing over here. So these are bi-directional worksheets, and they are linked back to the original objects. So we'll leave that on there. Running a little short on time. Let's go ahead and duplicate another one and make a rig plot. So we'll click over here, or we can just highlight it, go to the hamburger, duplicate, rename, rig plot. Whoa. That didn't go well. Rig plot. All right. We need to change our visibilities. So let's start with that. Our viewport is selected. I'm going to hit classes. This time we do want our hoist. We do want our hoist labels. And maybe I don't need to see, maybe I'll gray the truss and where are the lights? Gray the lighting fixtures. Preview that. I think I'll accept that. Not too bad. We can get rid of this sheet. We can get rid of the symbol key. And then let's add a hoist worksheet. Again, back to that Spotlight menu, reports, and we can create a hoist report. I'll actually just accept all the defaults here. I'm going to hit OK. And then that made this. And for some reason, these rows are teeny tiny, so let's stretch this out a little bit. Great. And then, again, I can do a worksheet on drawing and just close this here. There is my hoist worksheet. And again, each one of these hoists has a data tag with its X and Y off of the origin. And if we had done calculations, those data tags would be in there. That information would be in the data tag. Anyway, last one, let's make a 3D view sheet. So I'm going to duplicate one last. We'll call this 3D views. I'm going to start with just emptying off everything that we have here. And then we're going to go back to our design layer. We'll start with making a center section. So production A. I'm going to make a center section viewport. And to do that, I'll go to View, create section viewport, and then I just need to draw a line to define the section and which way I want to face. Double click. Again, the most important part here is create on layer. So make sure that goes to 3D views. I'll take this chance to title it center section, and let's just hit OK and see what we got. There we go. So there's our section viewport. Now I'm just going to crop that down a little bit, so I'm going to add a crop. Again, I'll go back to the rectangle tool. Let's just change my mode, corner by corner. I'll just go up here, somewhere there. Great. It's a little large, so maybe I go to an 1/8 inch. And I'll just move that over here. Get this little red border saying it needs updated, so I just hit update. We'll see what we got. There's my person, there's my truss, PA. All right, I'm going to have to accept that in the interest of time. And then I promised that I would make a viewport out of that camera. So let's go back to my production layer. I'm just going to highlight that camera. I'm going to activate it. So again, this is showing me the view with that body, with that lens, with that field of view. And I can tweak it here. Maybe I look up just a little bit. But I don't really have time to nitpick this. Maybe we'll scoot back just a little bit. And we'll just have to accept that. So I'll go back to here, View, Create Viewport. I will accept the defaults there. Again, I'm going to make sure this goes on 3D views. I'm going to give it a title. Front of house camera. That last one was 1/8 inch. So let's try an 1/8 inch again. I'm just going to hit OK. Not too bad. Not too bad. So again, we could go through and make some more views on here, but we really need to keep moving, and each one of these can get different class and layer visibilities, and each one can get different render settings. So I can maybe make this a hidden line, see how that looks. Hit update. But the next thing that we're going to do after this updates is the publish command. And really, it's the ideal way to export multiple files. Yeah, well, we're just going to have to go with that. So, file, publish command. So we can certainly go through and export one at a time, but this is a way more powerful dialog. And from here, we can see our available assets here on the left. We can import or export to Excel or image files or DWGs or PDFs, or you can print directly from here. So in our case, we're going to use this to combine our 5 sheet layers into a single PDF. And then I'll also point out that Vectorworks Service Select members can also upload to the cloud and do cloud processing and rendering here. But again, here are available assets on the left. So if I double click, it'll add them to my sheet set on the right. And I'm just going to add those 5 layers. I'm going to select them over here. Interesting. One of the powerful things about this is you can add prefixes to all your different, to all your sheets, or export them as separate or single files. I want to do a single file. And again, there's more DPI settings. I really just need to accept the defaults here and hit publish. Would you like to save that as a set? I'm going to say no. Ask you where you want to save it. I'm going to say desktop, save. So it should be exporting. And then when it's done, we have, on my other window, a 5-page PDF with a room set, a light plot, a rig plot, and some 3D views. And I'm out of time, so I guess that's it for me. I'm just going to do one final save here. I'm going to call this SES-7, SES-7, and there you go. Now, granted, I'm fully aware this design isn't going to win any awards or anything, but hopefully I've been able to show you a variety of the tools that are at your disposal with Vectorworks Spotlight. And, you know, we've breezed through over 100 topics here in the last 2 hours, and there's still a ton of features that I didn't even get to mention. So, yeah, it's a pretty big deal. My parting tip of the day is this, that if you plan on using Vectorworks much, you should absolutely be saving your assets so that you can reuse them. For the most part today, we've started from scratch because I want you to understand how the tools work, but Vectorworks has a ton of templates and preset and pre-made content that are included in the libraries. So many times it's just a matter of finding what you need and saving it. If you find yourself remaking the exact same thing show after show, then there's likely a way that you can save that. And that goes for, label legends, data tags, title blocks, worksheets, textures, any of those assets, save them, reuse them. And that's it. Thanks for sticking through to the end, everybody. And Mike, I'm going to throw it back to you.
Thanks, Ben. That was an excellent presentation. Now, before we wrap up, I wanted to mention a few additional resources. First, if you have not already, please remember to go ahead and download the course files for today's seminar. You will find the handouts button in the GoToWebinar interface. Also, if you're looking for any additional training materials or resources, I highly recommend heading over to the Vectorworks University at university.vectorworks.net. There you will find hundreds of training courses, videos, workflow documents, sample projects, and more. The Vectorworks University is a great resource to help you while you're exploring Vectorworks software. If you're looking for what to jump into next, I'd recommend starting with the Vectorworks Core Certification course. This is an in-depth class that will help you master the core tools, commands, and workflows of Vectorworks. You'll find this under the certifications on the Vectorworks University. I'd also like to remind everyone that you will be receiving an email with access information for the recording of today's session, so keep an eye out for that later on today. And finally, if you have any additional questions or would like to set up a training session to learn more about any features covered in today's seminar, please don't hesitate to reach out to our training team at training@vectorworks.net. So once again, I hope everyone enjoyed today's seminar. I hope you learned a lot and are excited to start using Vectorworks Spotlight. Thanks again, and have a great day.